The sickening crack of leather against flesh echoed across the prairie as Virginia Davies ran for her life, her bare feet pounding the hard, packed dirt. The year was 1875, and the Montana Territory offered little mercy to a woman fleeing an angry man. Blood trickled down her temple, mixing with sweat and tears as the afternoon sun beat down relentlessly. Her once white dress, now torn and stained with dirt and blood, clung to her trembling frame as she spotted a weathered barn in the distance. You can run, but you can't hide. The drunken voice of her stepfather carried on the wind, followed by the sound of his uneven footsteps growing fainter as Virginia pushed herself harder. The barn loomed larger with each desperate stride. It was her only hope, a sanctuary that might conceal her until the danger passed. Her lungs burned and her legs threatened to give out as she finally reached the structure, slipping around to its far side where deep shadows promised protection. Virginia collapsed behind the barn, pressing her back against the rough wooden planks, drawing her knees to her chest and making herself as small as possible. Every breath was agony, her ribs bruised from the earlier beating. She closed her eyes, praying that he wouldn't find her here on this stranger's property. Minutes stretched into an hour as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The relative quiet was broken only by the occasional nickering of horses and the rustle of hay from inside the barn. Virginia remained frozen, afraid that the slightest movement might betray her presence. She didn't hear the approaching footsteps until they were nearly upon her steady, purposeful steps, not the drunken stagger of her stepfather. Virginia's heart hammered in her chest as she tried to make herself even smaller, burying her face against her knees. "Madam, are you all right?" The voice was deep, tinged with concern rather than malice. Virginia's head snapped up, her green eyes wide with fear as they met the steady gaze of a tall man in a worn leather vest, dusty from a day's work. His dark hair was partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and his expression was a mixture of surprise and worry. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking, "don't tell anyone I'm here." The man crouched down, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. "My name's Ryder Xavier. This is my ranch." Virginia flinched as he moved to take off his hat, revealing kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps in his late 20s. "You're hurt," Ryder observed, his gaze lingering on the bruises blooming across her face and arms. "Who did this to you?" Virginia remained silent, years of fear making trust impossible. But something in his steady gaze made her want to believe him. "My stepfather," she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. "He'll kill me if he finds me." Ryder's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "He won't find you here, you have my word." He extended his hand slowly as one might approach a frightened animal. "Can you stand?" "There's a house just beyond that ridge with food, clean water, and a place to rest." Virginia hesitated, her mind racing. She had nowhere else to go, no money, no friends in this harsh territory. Cautiously, she placed her trembling hand in his calloused palm. As Ryder helped her to her feet, Virginia swayed, the world tilting dangerously. Without hesitation, he caught her, his strong arms supporting her weight. "Easy now," he murmured. "I've got you." Looking up at this stranger who had found her in her darkest moment, Virginia felt something she hadn't experienced in years' hope. It was fragile and terrifying, but it was there. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryder's expression softened as he looked down at the bruised woman leaning against him. "From this moment on, no one's going to hurt you again," he promised, his words carrying the weight of an oath. "You're under my protection now." Neither of them could have known in that moment how those words would change both their lives forever. The walk to Ryder's homestead seemed to take an eternity. Virginia struggled with each step, her body protesting the movement after the day's trauma. Ryder offered to carry her, but pride made her refuse, though she leaned heavily on his arm. "Almost there," Ryder encouraged as they crested a small hill, revealing a modest but well-maintained cabin with smoke curling from the chimney. A small vegetable garden flourished to one side, and a few chickens pecked at the ground nearby. As they approached, the door swung open, and an older woman with silver-streaked hair stepped out, her weathered face creasing with concern when she spotted them. "Good heavens, Ryder, what happened?" she exclaimed, rushing forward. "Martha, this lady needs help," Ryder explained to his housekeeper. "Can you prepare a bath and find some clean clothes?" Martha's kind eyes took in Virginia's disheveled appearance and bruised face without judgment. "Of course. Come inside, dear." The interior of the cabin was warm and inviting, smelling of freshly baked bread and coffee. Virginia felt out of place amidst the simple cleanliness, acutely aware of her dirt-streaked skin and tattered dress. "I'll fetch the doctor," Ryder said, already moving toward the door. "No." Virginia's voice was sharp with panic. "Please, no doctor, my stepfather he might hear." Ryder paused, studying her with concern. "Those injuries need tending." "Martha can help me," Virginia pleaded. "Please, just for tonight." After a moment, Ryder nodded reluctantly. "All right, but if you're worse by morning, I'm getting Doc Porter regardless." As he stepped outside, Martha guided Virginia to a small room off the main living area. "Let's get you cleaned up, child. Then we can see about those bruises." The warm bath was a luxury Virginia hadn't experienced in months. Martha helped her wash her hair and gently clean the cuts on her face and arms, clucking sympathetically at each revealed injury. The older woman's hands were gentle but efficient as she applied salve to the worst of the bruises. "How long has this been happening, dear?" Martha asked softly as she helped Virginia into a borrowed nightgown. Virginia stared down at her hands. "Since my mother died 3 years ago. It got worse after we moved west from Boston. Her voice faltered. "He wanted to marry me off to his gambling partner to settle a debt." Martha's expression hardened. "Well, you're safe now. Ryder won't let any harm come to you." "Why would he help a stranger?" Virginia questioned, unable to comprehend such kindness after years of cruelty. Martha smiled sadly. "That's just the kind of man he is. Lost his parents young, knows what it's like to be alone in this world. Now rest, child. Things will look brighter in the morning." Sleep came surprisingly easily, exhaustion overriding Virginia's fear. When she awoke, sunlight was streaming through the small window, and the smell of coffee and bacon filled the air. For a moment, she forgot where she was, panic rising in her chest until the events of the previous day flooded back. Tentatively, she made her way to the main room where Ryder sat at a wooden table, a newspaper spread before him. He looked up immediately, rising to his feet. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" he asked, his deep voice laced with genuine concern. "Better, thank you," Virginia replied, self-consciously touching the bruise on her cheek. She was dressed in a simple blue dress that Martha had altered during the night, far too aware of Ryder's gaze. "Hungry? Martha's made enough breakfast to feed an army." As if on cue, Martha emerged from the kitchen with a platter of food. "Sit down, both of you, before it gets cold." The normalcy of the scene sitting at a table sharing a meal was almost overwhelming after months of fear and hunger. Virginia ate slowly, savoring each bite, feeling Ryder's eyes on her occasionally. "I need to know if your stepfather will come looking for you," he said finally. "I want to be prepared." Virginia set down her fork. "His name is Thomas Davies. He's been asking around town about property to buy, but mostly he gambles and drinks." She hesitated. "He won't stop looking. I'm his investment." Ryder's expression darkened. "You're not going back to him. I'll ride into town today, see what I can find out." "I can't impose on your kindness any longer," Virginia protested. "I should move on, find work somewhere, and go where?" Ryder interrupted gently. "With no money, no references, the frontier is no place for a woman alone." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Stay here, at least until we figure something out, please." The sincerity in his eyes made Virginia's throat tighten. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Ryder was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "When I found you behind that barn, something inside me just knew I needed to help you." Call it instinct or fate or whatever you like, but I can't turn my back on you now." Before Virginia could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Ryder stood immediately, moving to the window. "It's Sheriff Miller," he announced, relief evident in his voice. "Friend of mine, I sent word last night." Virginia tensed as Ryder opened the door to admit a tall man with a silver badge pinned to his vest. The sheriff removed his hat, nodding respectfully to Virginia. "Madam, Ryder here tells me you're in some trouble." Over the next hour, Virginia recounted her story to the attentive sheriff. How her mother had married Thomas Davies after her father's death, how the man had seemed respectable until her mother passed away, how the abuse had started slowly and then escalated. How they'd moved west when creditors closed in, and how Thomas had tried to settle a gambling debt by offering Virginia to a man 3 times her age. "I ran when he told me," she finished, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "That's when this happened." She gestured to her bruised face. Sheriff Miller's expression was grave. "Davies has been in town for about 2 weeks throwing money around, making a nuisance of himself. I'll keep an eye out, but legally." He sighed. "As your stepfather, he has certain rights." "He has no right to beat her," Ryder cut in sharply. "Of course not," the sheriff agreed, "but proving abuse isn't easy and the law favors family relationships, unless—" He studied Virginia thoughtfully. "How old are you, Miss Davies?" 22, she replied. "Then there is one solution." The sheriff looked between them. "If you were married, your husband would have legal precedence over your stepfather." A heavy silence fell over the room. Virginia's cheeks burned as she stared at her hands, unable to look at Ryder. "Thank you for the suggestion, Sheriff," Ryder said evenly. "We'll consider all options." After the sheriff left, an awkward tension lingered. Martha busied herself with household tasks while Ryder stood by the window, lost in thought. "I should go," Virginia said finally. "I've brought enough trouble to your door." Ryder turned to face her. "And go where? Back to him?" "Of course not," she answered, frustration evident in her voice. "But I won't force you into a marriage of convenience. I'll find another way." "Is that what you think I'm worried about?" Ryder crossed the room, stopping before her. "Virginia, I'm not concerned about myself. I'm concerned about your safety." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Virginia saw no pity in his gaze, only determination and something deeper she couldn't quite name. "Let me think," he said more gently. "There must be a solution that doesn't involve putting you back in danger." That evening, after a quiet dinner, Ryder asked Virginia to join him on the porch. The sunset painted the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and purples, casting long shadows across the land. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes, the day's tension slowly ebbing away. "Tell me about yourself," Ryder said finally. "Not the hardships, but who you are. What did you dream of before all this?" The question caught Virginia off guard. It had been so long since anyone had asked what she wanted, what she thought. "I used to love to read," she admitted. "My father had a small library, and I would lose myself in those books for hours. I dreamed of seeing the places they described: Paris, London, even the far west." She smiled ruefully, "Though I imagined it differently than this." "What else?" Ryder prompted, his voice warm with genuine interest. "I wanted to teach," she continued, surprised at how easily the words came. "I had some schooling in Boston. Nothing formal, but enough to help the younger children in our neighborhood." Her expression softened at the memory. "There's something wonderful about watching someone learn, seeing that moment of understanding dawn on their face." Ryder nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "We need a teacher around here. Nearest school is 15 miles away in town. Most families either send their children away or teach them at home, but many are too busy working the land." Virginia looked at him in surprise. "Are you suggesting, just thinking aloud," he said. "This territory is still growing. There are opportunities here for those willing to look for them." They talked long into the evening, Ryder sharing stories of his own journey west after his parents died, how he'd worked cattle drives and saved enough to buy this small ranch 5 years ago. How he dreamed of expanding it, making something lasting in this harsh but beautiful land. As the stars emerged in the vast sky above, Virginia felt a strange peace settle over her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future uncertain and challenging, but free from fear. "It's getting late," Ryder said eventually, rising to his feet. "We should get some rest." As Virginia stood, their hands brushed accidentally, sending an unexpected warmth through her. Their eyes met in the dim light, and for a breathless moment neither moved away. "Thank you," she whispered. "For listening, for caring." Ryder's gaze dropped briefly to her lips before he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Get some sleep, Virginia. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next." That night, as Virginia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she realized with startling clarity that in just 2 days, this place had begun to feel more like home than anywhere she'd been in years. The following morning brought an unwelcome visitor. Virginia was helping Martha hang laundry when the sound of galloping hooves drew their attention. A cloud of dust heralded the arrival of a rider pushing his horse hard. "Get inside," Martha ordered, her usually kind face hardening. "Now, child." Virginia didn't argue, hurrying into the house as Ryder emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. Through the window, she watched as a man she didn't recognize dismounted, gesturing wildly as he spoke to Ryder. Minutes later, Ryder entered the cabin, his expression grim. "Thomas Davies is in town, offering a reward for information about your whereabouts. He's claiming you stole family heirlooms before running away." Virginia's blood ran cold. "That's a lie. I took nothing but the clothes on my back." "I know," Ryder assured her. "But it gives him a legal reason to search for you, and it means someone might be tempted by the reward." "What do we do?" Her voice trembled despite her effort to remain calm. Ryder ran a hand through his hair, his internal struggle evident. "The sheriff's suggestion." He began hesitantly. "I know it's not ideal, but it would give you legal protection." Virginia stared at him, understanding dawning. "You're suggesting we marry?" "Yes." His directness caught her off guard. "It would be in name only, of course. You would have your own room, your own life. But legally, you'd be beyond his reach." The practical solution made sense, yet the thought of binding herself to another man, even one as kind as Ryder, filled Virginia with apprehension. "What about you?" she asked. "What would you gain from this arrangement?" Ryder looked surprised by the question. "I'm not looking to gain anything, Virginia. I just want to help you." "No one does something for nothing," she countered, years of harsh lessons making her suspicious of kindness. A flash of hurt crossed Ryder's face. "Is it so hard to believe someone might simply want to do the right thing?" Virginia's chest tightened with shame. This man had shown her nothing but respect and kindness, yet she questioned his motives. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I've forgotten what goodness looks like." Ryder's expression softened. He moved closer, carefully taking her hands in his. "I'm not asking for a real marriage, Virginia, just a legal shield to protect you. When things settle down, if you want to leave, I won't stop you." She looked up at him, this stranger who had found her broken and offered her safety without conditions. Something shifted within her, a fragile trust taking root. "All right," she agreed softly, "if you're certain." Relief washed over Ryder's face. "I'll ride into town tomorrow, speak with the preacher. The sooner we do this, the better." The following day passed in a blur of preparation. Martha altered one of her old dresses for Virginia, a simple cream-colored gown that was the closest thing to a wedding dress they could manage. Ryder returned from town with a simple gold band and news that the preacher would perform the ceremony at the ranch the next morning. "Davies is still in town," he reported, his expression troubled, getting louder and more insistent with his accusations. "The sheriff's watching him, but he can't hold him without cause." That night, Virginia stood before the small mirror in her room, staring at her reflection. The bruises on her face were fading to yellowish green, her eyes clearer than they had been in months. Tomorrow she would become Mrs. Ryder Xavier, a name change that represented both safety and uncertainty. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Ryder entered, carrying a small wooden box. He looked different, freshly shaven, his usually windswept hair neatly combed. "I wanted to give you this," he said, holding out the box. "It was my mother's." Virginia opened it to find a delicate silver pendant on a thin chain. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "She always said it brought her luck," Ryder explained. "I thought, well, we could use some luck tomorrow." Their eyes met, and Virginia saw the same uncertainty she felt reflected in his gaze. This was not how either of them had imagined marriage would come to them. "Ryder," she began hesitantly, "I want you to know that I'm grateful. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever comes after, I won't forget what you've done for me." He stepped forward, gently taking the necklace from the box. "May I?" Virginia nodded, turning so he could fasten it around her neck. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as they brushed against her skin, sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. When she faced him again, something had changed in the air between them. No longer just two strangers bound by circumstance, but something more complex, more fragile. "I should let you rest," Ryder said, his voice lower than usual. "Tomorrow will be a big day." As he turned to leave, Virginia caught his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, standing on tiptoe to press a soft kiss to his cheek. Ryder's eyes darkened as he looked down at her, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips before he stepped back. "Good night, Virginia," he said quietly, closing the door behind him. Morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the window. Virginia dressed with Martha's help, her hands trembling slightly as the older woman fastened the buttons of the cream dress. "You look lovely, child," Martha assured her, adjusting the pendant at Virginia's throat. "Nervous?" "Yes," Virginia admitted. "Not because of Ryder, he's been nothing but kind. It's just, I never thought I'd marry like this." Martha's weathered hands stilled their work. "Life rarely follows the path we imagine for ourselves. Sometimes the unexpected turns bring us to exactly where we're meant to be." A knock at the front door announced the preacher's arrival. Virginia took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders before stepping into the main room where Ryder waited with the minister and Sheriff Miller, who would serve as witness. Ryder's eyes widened slightly when he saw her, a flush of color rising to his tanned cheeks. He was dressed in his best clothes, a dark vest over a clean white shirt, his hair neatly combed. The ceremony was brief, the preacher's words blending together in Virginia's nervous mind until they reached the exchange of vows. She spoke her promises clearly, surprised at the emotion that welled up as Ryder slipped the simple gold band onto her finger. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher concluded. "You may kiss your bride." A moment of awkward hesitation passed between them before Ryder leaned forward, pressing a chaste kiss to Virginia's lips. It was brief, gentle, yet something unexpected flickered to life in that touch, a warmth that lingered even after he pulled away. Sheriff Miller congratulated them, his expression serious as he handed Ryder the marriage certificate. "This should keep Davies at bay legally, but be careful. Men like him don't always respect the law." After the preacher and sheriff departed, an unusual silence fell over the cabin. Martha busied herself preparing a special dinner, leaving the newlyweds alone in the main room. "So," Ryder said finally, a hint of awkwardness in his usually confident demeanor. "Mrs. Xavier." The name sounded strange to Virginia's ears. "It doesn't quite feel real," she admitted. "None of this has to change," Ryder assured her quickly. "This is still your space to heal, to figure out what you want." Virginia studied his face, this man who was now her husband-in-law if not in truth. "What do you want, Ryder? You've asked nothing for yourself in all of this." The question seemed to surprise him. He was quiet for a long moment before answering. "I want this ranch to thrive. I want to build something lasting here." His eyes met hers. "I want to know I've done right by you." Something in his simple honesty touched Virginia deeply. "I think you already have." The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Virginia helped Martha with household tasks and began spending time in the vegetable garden, finding peace in the simple work of tending growing things. Ryder taught her to ride, patient as she overcame her initial fear of the gentle mare he chose for her. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset and talking. Virginia learned about Ryder's dreams for the ranch, his ideas for breeding stronger cattle that could withstand the harsh Montana winters. In turn, she shared stories from her childhood in Boston, her love of literature, her hopes of someday teaching again. 2 weeks after their hasty wedding, Sheriff Miller rode out to the ranch with troubling news. Davies left town yesterday, he informed them grimly. But before he did, he was asking specific questions about you, Ryder, about your ranch. Ryder's expression hardened. You think he suspects Virginia is here? I can't say for certain, but I'd keep a watchful eye. He struck me as a man who doesn't give up easily when he thinks something belongs to him. After the sheriff left, Ryder was unusually quiet, checking and loading his rifle before dinner. Do you think he'll come here? Virginia asked that night as they sat by the fire. I don't know, Ryder answered honestly, but if he does, he'll find we're prepared. Virginia's hand unconsciously went to the wedding band on her finger, twisting it nervously. This is my fault. I've brought this danger to your door. Ryder moved from his chair to sit beside her on the small sofa. None of this is your fault, Virginia. The only person to blame is the man who hurt you. Their eyes met in the flickering firelight, and Virginia was struck by the protective fierceness in Ryder's gaze. Impulsively, she reached out, placing her hand over his. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Something shifted in Ryder's expression, his eyes dropping to her lips for a heartbeat before he stood abruptly. It's getting late. We should both get some rest. The following days brought an increased vigilance to the ranch. Ryder took to carrying his pistol even when working close to the house, and he asked one of his ranch hands to keep watch during the nights. The tension wore on Virginia, who found herself jumping at unexpected sounds and scanning the horizon whenever she stepped outside. A week passed with no sign of Thomas Davies, and Virginia began to hope that perhaps he had given up his search, moved on to another territory. She was in the garden harvesting late summer vegetables when she heard the distant sound of approaching riders. Standing, she shaded her eyes against the afternoon sun, spotting 3 men on horseback approaching from the east. Her heart stuttered when she recognized the hunched silhouette of her stepfather leading the group. Ryder. She called, dropping her basket as she ran toward the barn where he was mending tack. He emerged immediately at the urgency in her voice, following her gaze to the approaching riders. His expression hardened as he grabbed his rifle. Get inside, he ordered. Find Martha and stay away from the windows. Virginia hesitated, unwilling to leave him to face danger alone. Ryder, please, he cut her off, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that stole her breath. I can't focus on protecting you if I'm worried about where you are. Go inside. She nodded reluctantly, hurrying to the cabin where she found Martha already peering anxiously through the curtains. 3 riders, the older woman confirmed grimly. One of them looks mighty disagreeable. Virginia's hands trembled as she watched Ryder walk calmly to the front of the house, rifle held casually but ready. The riders slowed as they approached, Thomas Davies in the lead, his face twisted with anger even at a distance. Xavier. Davies called, his voice carrying clearly through the afternoon air. I hear you've been harboring something that belongs to me. Ryder's stance remained relaxed, but Virginia could see the tension in his shoulders. This is private property, Mr. Davies. State your business or move on. Davies laughed, an ugly sound that made Virginia's skin crawl. My business is my stepdaughter. The ungrateful girl ran off with family valuables. I'm here to retrieve what's mine. There's no one here by that description, Ryder replied evenly. And I'd appreciate it if you'd take your accusations elsewhere. One of Davies' companions leaned over, whispering something that made the older man's face darken with rage. You're lying. Word in town is you married a girl matching her description not 3 weeks ago. Awful convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Virginia's heart pounded as she watched the confrontation unfold. Ryder shifted his stance slightly, bringing the rifle into a more ready position. "My wife is none of your concern," he stated firmly. "Now I'll ask you once more to leave my property peacefully." Davies' hand moved toward the pistol at his hip. "I'm not leaving without what's mine, boy." What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion. Davies drew his weapon, but Ryder was faster, firing a warning shot into the ground near the man's horse. The animal reared in panic, throwing Davies from the saddle. His companions reached for their own weapons, but the sound of a shotgun being cocked behind them made them freeze. "I wouldn't," Sheriff Miller advised calmly, having approached unnoticed from the road. "Drop those guns, gentlemen." With the sheriff's unexpected arrival, the situation diffused rapidly. Davies was nursing a likely broken arm from his fall, but continued to spew threats and accusations as Miller confiscated the men's weapons. "I have witnesses who will testify she stole from me," Davies insisted. "I have rights." "What you have," the sheriff countered, "is a history of gambling debts and disturbing the peace. Now let's discuss these theft allegations properly." Virginia, unable to remain hidden any longer, stepped onto the porch. "There was no theft," she called clearly. "I took nothing but the clothes I wore." Davies' face contorted with fury at the sight of her. "You ungrateful little, that's enough," Ryder cut him off sharply, moving to stand protectively in front of Virginia. "Sheriff, this man attempted to sell my wife to settle a gambling debt before we were married. When she refused, he beat her severely. I have witnesses to her condition when she arrived here." The sheriff's expression hardened. "Is that true, Mrs. Xavier?" Virginia stepped forward, standing tall despite her trembling hands. "Yes, and I can show you records in Boston that will prove he squandered my mother's inheritance as well." "You can't believe this whore," Davies began, but his words were cut short as the sheriff roughly hauled him to his feet. "That's enough out of you," Miller growled. "Threatening folks with firearms, attempted assault, that's more than enough to hold you while we sort out the rest of these allegations." He looked to Ryder. "I'll need statements from both of you, but it can wait until tomorrow." As the sheriff led the three men away, Virginia felt her knees weaken with relief. Ryder was immediately at her side, his arm strong around her waist as he guided her back inside. "It's over," he murmured, his voice gentle with reassurance. "He can't hurt you anymore." The emotional weight of the confrontation crashed over Virginia in a wave. She turned into Ryder's embrace, her tears soaking into his shirt as he held her close, one hand stroking her hair soothingly. "You're safe," he repeated, his lips brushing against her temple. "I promised I'd protect you, and I meant it." Virginia pulled back slightly, looking up at the man who had become her protector, her friend, and her husband in name. In his eyes, she saw not just concern but something deeper, something that made her heart race for entirely different reasons than fear. "Ryder," she whispered, her hand coming up to touch his cheek. "Thank you for finding me behind that barn." Something shifted in his expression, a vulnerability replacing his usual quiet strength. "Virginia, he began, then faltered, searching for words. "These past weeks, having you here, it's changed everything." The confession hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. Virginia felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a sensation so different from the constant fear she'd lived with for years. "I feel it too," she admitted softly. "I came here looking for safety, but I found so much more." Ryder's gaze dropped to her lips, his own parting slightly as he leaned closer. This time when their lips met, it wasn't the chaste, perfunctory kiss of their wedding ceremony. It was gentle at first, questioning, before deepening with a hunger that surprised them both. Virginia's arms wound around his neck as she pressed closer, feeling the rapid beat of his heart matching her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected this," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "When I found you that day, I only wanted to help. I didn't know I'd fall in love with you." The words sent a thrill through Virginia. "Say it again," she whispered. Ryder's hands framed her face, his thumbs gently caressing her cheeks. "I love you, Virginia Xavier." Not because of a piece of paper or a hasty ceremony, but because of who you are. Your strength, your kindness, the way you face each day with courage despite everything you've endured. Tears welled in Virginia's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "I love you too," she said, the words feeling both foreign and perfectly right on her lips. "I think I started falling for you the moment you found me and promised to keep me safe." Their second kiss was deeper, filled with promise and newfound understanding. When they parted, Ryder's eyes were dark with desire, but he stepped back slightly, ever respectful. "We should take things slowly," he suggested, though his reluctance was evident. "Our beginning was unusual, to say the least." Virginia smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in years. "Our beginning may have been unusual, but it was also perfect in its own way." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "You found me when I was hiding, broken and afraid. You called me your bride to protect me, and now, somehow, it's become true in every way that matters." That night, they talked for hours, reimagining their future together not as a marriage of convenience, but as a true partnership built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and deepening love. Virginia spoke of her desire to start a small school for the neighboring ranch children, while Ryder shared his hopes for expanding their land and building a larger home. "Our home," he emphasized, the wonder of it evident in his voice. As the months passed, Virginia's stepfather faced justice for his crimes, the testimony of several Boston creditors and Virginia herself ensuring he would spend years behind bars. Free from his shadow at last, Virginia blossomed. She started teaching 5 children from neighboring ranches 3 days a week, her natural gift for education quickly earning her respect throughout the community. Ryder watched his wife grow more confident each day, her laughter becoming a common sound around their home. Their marriage, born of necessity, had transformed into a deep and abiding love that surprised and delighted them both. One year after Ryder had found Virginia hiding behind his barn, they stood together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. His arms encircled her from behind, his hands resting gently on the slight swell of her belly where their first child grew. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Xavier," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Virginia turned in his embrace, her eyes bright with happiness as she looked up at her husband. "When you found me that day, I thought my life was ending. I never imagined it was just beginning." Ryder's smile was tender as he touched the silver pendant that still hung at her throat. "My mother was right about this bringing luck. The day I found you was the luckiest day of my life." As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Virginia stood on tiptoe to kiss her husband, her heart full with the knowledge that she had found not just safety in his arms, but a love that would last a lifetime, a love born from compassion and grown through respect, a testament to the healing power of kindness and the unexpected journeys of the heart. In the years that followed, the Xavier Ranch flourished alongside their family. Virginia's school expanded to a proper building with 15 students, while Ryder's breeding program produced cattle sought after throughout the territory. Their firstborn son was joined by twin daughters 2 years later, filling their home with the joyful chaos of children. And though Virginia never forgot the bruised and frightened girl who had hidden behind a barn that fateful day, she was grateful for the journey that had led her to become the woman she now was, loved, respected, and finally, completely free.